Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Into the Outer Realms.
Happy Thursday.
If you saw us flash up for a second and then we went away, we got kind of an error message about it broadcasting to Facebook. So just got out, deleted everything, and now we're back. Makes no difference at all to our radio audiences on Wednesday nights on ERT and Friday nights on Patriot. But anyway, welcome. It's nice to see you. I think everything is set up and properly ready to go here. This one is from our case files.
Mm-hmm.
We're going back. It's a story that is told, a case that we relate, I guess I should say more accurately, in Roommates from Beyond, How to Live in a Haunted Home. This book, which has been very well received, is available on Amazon. It's available on Amazon as paperback like this, but also on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. So we do have a lot to talk about tonight. As far as this case, it's very detailed, and it's the only truly haunted house that we lived in as far as like horror movie tropes and nightmares. And we wound up leaving, getting out of our lease early. It was so bad. So we're going to roll the intro, and then we're going to come back. Welcome to my special guest star who's back. Enjoy her because she won't be back for a full month after tonight, but I have a bunch of really great shows coming up that I will tell you about. So welcome. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon, the preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's. For the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
All right, let's go to the chat room. Good evening,
Hi,
Michael. Hi, CL. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Michael.
Hi.
Nice to see you. It's been a minute. Anyway, welcome back.
Thanks.
I want to say before I forget, I want to give a very special thank you to Three Beards Podcast. They had me on the show for the 6th time last night, and we were talking about Ukraine and Russia and the tension there and the context. We were joined by the newest member of the Red Thread Collective, Chad Pitt. Definitely head over to Three Beards Podcast if you haven't seen it. I know both of us do kind of a paranormal show, but this is important stuff, and we try to have context history. We're all researchers, so I just wanted to say that. So let's jump into this. When we wrote Roommates from Beyond, How to Live in a Haunted Home, the use of home instead of house was very purposeful.
Yes.
Because when you say, "Oh, I lived in a haunted house," it immediately conjures up. I'm seeing Gothic arches and a Queen Anne style with Italianate and bats and wrought iron and all that. This was a excuse me, a lovely little
Cape
two-story up and down Cape Cod. In a town called Tinton Falls, New Jersey. It's about in the center of the state. It was a very nice neighborhood. The neighbors were all great. They were good people. And yet what we experienced for 9 or 10 months was at times horrific.
It really is the stuff of movies.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, which it's tough when you say stuff like that because people's minds are immediately going. Some of what you hear will sound a little bit Amityville horror-esque. I think that's just the nature, but I think that's the nature of dark entities trying to wear you down, get you fighting with each other. So on one hand, it's a horror movie trope. On another, it's the modus operandi of dark entities. That's what they feed on. They feed on fear. They feed on anger. I have that book as a prize for naming you Green Alien Eleonora. I love the book. And Eleonora is, Tanya, if you move
which one?
the other way, there she is. Hello. So let's dive right in. Like I said, the house is unique for us. We've moved a lot in our 25 years together.
We are gypsies.
Yeah, every 4 or 5 years we hit the road. We've lived in a lot of houses. We've written about them. We talk all the time about the haunting phenomenon in this house where we've been for almost 4 years.
And this one's fun. I mean, there is nothing as active as this house is. Never scary.
And even the holler, the 3 acres in the holler, and we'll do a holler show for you maybe sometime in the spring or summer, or maybe following a big announcement that hopefully we'll have in a couple months. So, you know, this, of all the homes we've been in, this one never felt like a home at all. And when we first went to see the house, I remember we pulled up, and as cute as it was, I wanted to drive away straight away. We went inside. It was lovely. The kitchen had recently been remodeled. We fell in love with it. It looked like a great place for the kids. You know, we had a housemate who we had just started a business with, and we experienced everything there, everything that we talk about in the book, everything from manifestation, infestation to oppression. And I'm excited to talk about that because we haven't done a show where we really talked about what's our core thing, which is investigating and mitigating haunting phenomena. So, right, manifestation, you start to notice things. Infestation, they're happening more and more, and they're starting to interfere with your day. And then there's oppression. And when the oppression comes, there's depression, there's anger, all the things that we're going to talk to you. So you'll see how these things slowly evolve. So why don't you give them the background, and then we'll start talking details.
Yeah.
And thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. December 2004. We move into this 2-bedroom Cape Cod. Well, it was really a three bedroom, and then it had the finished basement. So
but that was the attic space, though.
Yeah, I guess. So anyway, quiet street, quiet neighborhood, New Jersey. There were, as we mentioned, there were 5 of us because we had our housemate, our business partner, we had the 2 kids. So it was just it was a perfect situation for all of us.
Well, we had started a business together, and because it was a new business and you two were working full-time for the business and I was a freelancer in publishing, we got turned down for a ton of houses. So the house search went on for a really long time. We were about to open the school. So it was a good house. It was nice. It was initially inviting, but we were ready to nail down something. It was far from our first choice. And I think that does play into these larger narratives.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I had actually forgotten that. And it's true because it was hard to find rentals. And people thought it was weird that we had just started a business and we were going to, have a housemate. And it was just, I didn't think that was terribly weird. But anyway, it was hard. So when we first pulled up and I had that feeling like I wanted to just drive away, normally I would have said, let's just drive away. But we didn't because we were kind of getting a little on the desperate side to find something that would accommodate. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it was close to, we didn't mention either, but it was close to the acting school that we had just opened.
Right. So we had an acting school. We had a rehearsal space for our theater company. It was very ambitious. We went out on our own. We broke off from an established, very highly respected business, and that was causing some waves. So it was, living together. We talked about it. We could control costs, free up capital to invest in the business. We did quite a bit of that. And our 2 children were really happy having this, what some would perceive as an outsider. We had gone to high school together. In the Italian tradition, I had a bunch of friends at the time that the kids called uncle, even though they weren't. It's just it's an honorific. It's a way to do it. And he really was particularly like a grandfather to them.
Mm-hmm. So, as we mentioned, we had spent a lot of time and energy looking for a house. I remember there was one house in particular that I really, really wanted, fell in love with it. It was right up against the woods. It had this beautiful deck, and then it had this beautiful balcony. And
yeah, I remember that one. And they just didn't feel comfortable with our
was like,
proof of income.
Yeah, you being self-employed, all of it. So anyway, I was really disappointed about that. But finally, we find this cute little thing. The kitchen really did it for me because, like I said, it was this huge kitchen, brand new, remodeled. So anyway, we take the house, obviously. There was a nice backyard that was great for the kids. Up until that point, our two kids had been sharing a bedroom, so they each got their own bedroom. So there were a lot of pluses. So we were all very happy, very excited.
And there were times before, while it was still in the manifestation stage, there were times we had picnics there, we had barbecues, we had a beautiful garden. I had these 8-foot tall mutant sunflowers. I mean, the heads on these things were bigger, than a human head, and they were wonderful. I found a cannonball buried in the garden when I was digging it up. So it was neat in those ways. But then it reminds me of the horror movie trope where you have these young people, and this was 2004, so this is 17 years ago. We were considerably younger. We were about 35. We were about 35 years old. We're starting this new business. I'm starting it with my buddy who I was doing plays with when we were 16. We got 2 kids. Jeremy's in the theater company, our son. And you move into this house and you have so much hope for the future. You're making a clean start after some turmoil. We had been living with relatives as a way to get out. And it very quickly devolved into a place of fear.
Very quickly, almost immediately, right?
Yeah.
From the first day, really. So the first day we move in, it's raining, it's pouring down rain, everything's getting soaked as we're moving in, and we get our stuff in, and we have everything's falling over. The basement was flooded, and so that was the first thing.
Right, and that was supposed to be our bedroom. So it's a cold, rainy December day. The move is a little bit stressful. It wasn't quite organized. It went on and on. Things are getting wet and on. Yeah, the basement's flooded.
And actually, it wasn't supposed to be our bedroom. If you remember, we were going to take the loft upstairs.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about it was going to be the hippie love loft. And so things are immediately
was going to take the basement.
Yeah.
So we had to shift everything around and go stay with family until the whole basement thing got
He went
sorted
upstairs
out.
2 floors to the high ground. And we wound up having to immediately go back to my parents for several weeks. Mm-hmm. They had to extract the water. They had to mold mitigate. They had to replace the carpet.
It was a nightmare. I mean, it was
it was. I mean,
nightmare.
Yeah. So, and he's there then alone, and we're still commuting the 40 minutes to go to the business for weeks. Craig brings up this a little bit of a sideline, but we don't have a guest tonight, so we can do this. I want a former bartender as a haunt to make me a drink every now and then. That comes with an interesting caveat, is that addicts can haunt the living and either bring on a drinking problem, exacerbate a drinking problem, have someone who's recovering suddenly start using again. So I know you're being tongue-in-cheek, Greg.
I was going to say,
but it's a teaching point.
Doesn't mean they were an alcoholic either.
No. So Angelina says, I'm visualizing this place, very good at telling this story. What an experience. Oh, well, thank you. Don't know how deep you want to go, Angelina, with your as it gets more intense, but that's totally up to you. But anyway.
So the basement gets done. We start settling in, getting unpacked. All of a sudden, as we're unpacking and settling in, I start to notice everything starts to get covered with this black film, almost like a soot, and it's getting worse by the day, and it's all over everything, and every day it's getting worse. We wipe it off, it come back. So we could not figure out what it was. And then out of nowhere, suddenly, it was an oil furnace. It was the first time we had ever lived anywhere with an oil furnace. And it stopped working because we had always had, I think,
Yeah, and this had to be January.
It was,
so if we moved in early December,
December,
but we didn't really, but we were with my parents.
right.
I can't recall
Yeah,
if
you're
we
right,
spent
probably-
Christmas in the place.
I
I want
think-
to say we probably didn't. So
We
it
didn't.
probably was, yeah.
We didn't. We were at your parents that Christmas.
Yeah.
So it would have been January. Anyway, furnace just stops working one day. We can't figure out why. So I called the repairman. And I was home alone. Honestly, maybe Jolie was taken. I have no idea where Jolie was. She was little. She was 4 at the time. But I know Jeremy would have been in school. You
Yep.
were at the acting school. So I was home alone or with Jolie. She must have been there. Anyway, I answer the door and the repairman's there. And he has this look on his face. Like, I don't know, like he's pissed off or something. And I can't figure out why. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. Right. So I'm thinking I have this, this grumpy repairman to deal with or whatever. And he just has this. So anyway, I take him down to the basement, show him where the furnace is. But as we're headed down to the basement, he starts asking me questions like, who's the person researching and writing about fantasy? And that was Joey at the time. He was doing the research and writing his first novel. And I was like, my husband? I had no idea where he's going with all of this. So they starts asking me about my grandmother and telling me my grandmother's name and telling me that she was gifted and that I'm gifted like she was. He's just giving me all this detail and I'm completely blown away by all of it. He's like, you have the gift too. You just don't know how to use it. So this was years before I really knew that I always thought everything was my imagination. I always dismissed it all. So he looks at the heating system and finds out there's nothing wrong with it. There's no reason for it to have stopped working. But what he did find is that there was no filter. So when they did all the prepping for the house before we moved in, they forgot they probably took the filter out to replace it and they forgot to put a new one in. He goes, well, that's really bad. And that's why you have all this soot all over everything. And you could have got carbon monoxide poisoning. So it's a good thing your furnace stopped working. So we were being looked after. That's always such a strange thing to me looking back because there was so much dark, so much oppressive, like dark stuff going on. And yet we had that sort of, protection.
Right. Obviously, your grandma Clara was there.
Yeah. And I have always thought that was my grandmother because for him to pick her up in that moment, she had been dead for decades at that point. So that was just very interesting. So she must have been there with me. Anyway, he explained that he was a medium. I think at that point, Ralph, our roommate came, and then he says to him, "Oh, by the way, when your cousin died, it wasn't your fault." Just like out of nowhere, he tells him this, and also he says to him, "You're driving too fast and you need to slow down." And he was like, whoa, because he did drive too fast.
Right.
So,
now, I had known him for almost 20 years, and he had never told me about the incident at the lake involving his cousin and all the guilt that he had.
right.
So it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I mean, we didn't know people like that at the time.
That was just like stuff that we watched on television. We didn't think there really were people like that at that point.
Right.
So he says to me, you really have the gift. I can show you how to use it. And, if you want, I can come by your house and start teaching. I was like, yeah, I think it's really cool what you're able to do. I'd love to learn how to do it. So he comes back a few weeks later. And by that point, I was more interested in asking him to explain to me what was going on in the house because things had just increasingly got worse by then. I didn't care about him teaching me how to do anything. I was just like, can I like take you around the house and you can just maybe tell me what's going on? So we just went room by room, which is what I'm going to do now. And just kind of take you guys through what was going on. So we started in our son's room, and he had been experiencing all kinds of strange phenomena. So one of the major things that was going on for him is like every morning at 3 a.m. he was getting woken up. So witching hour, of course, at 3 a.m. hour. But his ceiling fan would automatically switch on. His stereo would switch on. Sometimes his television would switch on, but this was always happening at 3 a.m. for him. One night, ceiling fan switched on, woke him up. He looks over at the television and he sees a scene playing out on the television. But the only thing is the television wasn't on. But he sees a scene in which it was a man, I believe, choking a woman on the television screen. And it freaked him out so badly that he went and slept on the couch for the night. So
he was about 12 at the time?
Yeah, he was about 12.
Yeah.
So,
hi, Lori. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Lori. Hi, Jessica. So then we go into Jolie's room. And like I said, Jolie was about 4 at the time. Now, up until this point, until we moved into this house, Jolie was just a wee little thing. Mm-hmm. She had not had nightmares. She had never had problems with nightmares before that. She had not had headaches. And once we moved, now the headaches could have been, connected maybe from the furnace or something else going on in the house. So it's hard to know with the headaches, but she started to experience headaches and nightmares immediately. And the nightmares certainly weren't caused by the furnace. So I was, telling him that she's having trouble sleeping. She's waking up now with nightmares. She's never had this before. And that she has witnessed something in the middle of the night, like a dark sort of presence moving down the hallway toward the living room, like a black mass. And that had scared her terribly as well. And the living room was weird.
Yeah, it was an odd room.
It was an odd room, but you never felt comfortable in there.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hardly spent any time in that living room.
It was creepy. You always felt like you were being watched. Mm-hmm. Our roommate had a cat, and there were times where the cat would come down the stairs, like look into the living room, and then like dash away as if hackles up and just kind of get away. So anyway.
Yeah. So we're kind of learning a little bit as we go. So one of the tropey things I know is, 3 a.m. This is a strange time in the movies. It's always, there's the Ingmar Berggren film, The Hour of the Wolf. So I was familiar with that. It's also called the witching hour. And our son is persistently having these experiences at 3 a.m. Now, I don't know if we talk about it later, because it's been a while since we've done this presentation. But Jolie's, I think that house unlocked, Jolie's a very talented psychic medium now. But for years, she had nightmares. She saw horrific things. She drew these things. Jessica says the attic, and I don't know if we've talked about it on the show or other presentations. We have this idea that basements, attics, and because so the living room became this sort of self-fulfilling or catch-22 really, where nobody was ever in it. We didn't really decorate it. We spent time in our separate rooms, and the kitchen sort of became the common area.
Yes.
But attics, right? You don't really claim them. They're boxes of stuff, and they really invite walk-ins. Mm-hmm. Basements, attics, sheds, cabins in the woods, spectral squatters. Mm-hmm. So we've sometimes helped people who have a very noisy attic or a very noisy basement. Say, hang some stuff on the walls, unpack some of the boxes, set up a little furniture, mm-hmm. claim the space. But we didn't know any of this. We were passengers. Really didn't. Yeah. So I think in some ways maybe we were making it worse. 3 a.m. our phone would ring. almost every single morning. And we had, it was the old landlines even then, 2004, you still had that in our bedroom.
Mhm.
I think finally we shut the ringer off, but it would ring. Nobody was ever there. We'd hear clicks, beeps, static. We talk about wearing my Mothman hat tonight. That's the kind of phenomena that John Keel would experience. We knew nothing of John Keel at the
This
time.
was years
Yeah,
before
there was
we-
no. Well, the Mothman movie was 2 years old, but we didn't know about it.
We didn't know about it till years later.
Sometimes there would be nothing except silence.
Mhm.
This is a phenomenon, like I said, that John Keel reported in the 60s and 70s. But the phone was invented in 1876, and this phenomena started happening almost immediately.
Mhm.
There are reports. There's one from Newark, New Jersey, a funeral parlor owner, 1878, 2 years after the phone. Now he gets the phone installed, and he's like, "This is great because I don't have to be at the funeral home half a mile from my house all the time. I'll just get these phone calls." So he every night for him it's 4 a.m. He and his wife are awakened by a phone ringing, and nobody is there. We didn't learn about that until just a couple years ago.
Mhm.
We're watching the show
I was gonna
with
say, I forgot what show we saw.
with the
that
actor
on.
Robert Englund. Is pretty good.
Oh, that's right.
So to have privacy, you walked in a door and there was what do they call that? Bi-level stairs. So they were like this. So you could go upstairs straight into the kitchen, or you could go downstairs straight into the basement. It was a straight shot, and that was our bedroom. You couldn't see the bed, but so we put up a beaded curtain.
Mhm.
So what's going on in the middle of the night? We're hearing the beaded curtain swinging.
It was always
um,
after the phone would ring.
Yeah, if Jolie coming in, what's going on? Often in time, in sync with these phantom phone calls. So
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and there was obviously nobody was there.
Split
but
entry.
We would hear the beaded curtains rustle. So back to the investigation. So we go through, I tell him what's going on with Jolie, what's going on in her room. The other thing that was going on is up in the upstairs bedroom. Nobody would be up there, but you would hear a ball bouncing, like heavy ball bouncing across the floor, and the cat would come racing downstairs. I'm trying to think. There were voices of children. One day I remember I was home alone again. I don't know where Jolie must have been in preschool. Oh, she was in kindergarten. That's why. I just remembered. She was like in preschool, kindergarten. Anyway, I was home alone again, and I hear these kids talking, and it was so clear, so distinct. I thought, like, what do the kids get out of school early? I look around. There's no kids outside. There's no kids anywhere. And I finally could make out that it was coming from the basement. And I actually was so freaked out. I left and went to the acting school because I didn't want to be home alone.
All right.
at
So
that
Jack
point.
shows back up to start you on your path.
He does. And well, he says it's just poltergeist with Jeremy.
Right.
And now I did know enough to know at that point, because my grandmother had talked to me a little bit about poltergeist, and I had read a little bit about it, because I became interested in that when I was around 12 and had read a couple of books. And poltergeist activity is not consistent with what was going on. Poltergeist usually revolves, now Jeremy was the right age.
Mhm.
It usually revolves around a teen or preteen. It's usually a female, not always. It can be a boy. When they're coming into puberty, and it's more like telekinesis. It's usually like objects moving, loud banging, doors closing. It stops as suddenly as it starts. This wasn't that. There was so much more to what was going on than that. But he gives me this sort of flip answer and says he'll come back, but then he never does.
He just never does that, and he couldn't wait. I remember we were sitting at the table with him.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Your wife's very talented, and you need to listen to her advice. You need to respect her intuition," and that really started us. Angelina said here that it was cool, and it set you on the path of learning. But really, he didn't say much, but yet it did.
Yeah.
It did, and I started to take that journey of listening to your instincts a lot more and all that. So, but then almost immediately into response of all this, and he goes away in fear just one day. Like he can't wait to get out of there.
It was clear.
We start to really get into semi-oppressive stuff.
Right. So I guess one of the first things that happened, as far as that goes, I was in our room. I was putting makeup on. We had this full-length mirror, and I was standing in front of the mirror putting makeup on, and over my right shoulder in the mirror, I see this hog's head, this like humanoid figure. So it's human body, hog head, big tusks coming out. It had some kind of, I know this sounds crazy. I hear how crazy this sounds, but this is exactly what I saw. It had like a uniform with epaulets. Like I can still see it so clearly. It was like a dark blue, gold or like yellow epaulets. And I flipped my head around because it was like, what? And there was nothing there. I didn't feel threatened. I wasn't afraid. I was just really confused because I was like, I know I just saw that. I know I'm not hallucinating. I just saw this thing in the mirror. It was just like a split second. But I didn't tell anybody because I knew how crazy it is. Even now, it sounds completely crazy.
Now you made a drawing of it, but I think you didn't feel like you captured it and it looked kind of cartoony because it's not in the book.
It's not in the book. I did
Was
make
that
a
why?
drawing. Yeah, because it was imposing. It wasn't scary. It was intense, I guess. And my artistic abilities just aren't up to the level of capturing the intensity of the thing.
So you didn't tell me about it.
I did not tell Joey. I didn't tell anybody because it was just nutty.
So 2 days later, I get home from work, get home from the studio or whatever, and I have a ritual. I have to go downstairs, get changed, look at my email and all that. So I come in the back door and head straight down into the basement. So before I reach the bottom of the stairs, Tanya's at the stove and she hears me let out this terrifying scream, and I scramble backwards up the stairs so she can kind of see me around the entrance of the stairs. And I tell her that as I got to the bottom of the stairs, I open those beaded curtains, and floating up there, probably about a foot off the ground, is this spectral hog's head. Scared the heck out of me.
Scared the heck out of me because he never like screams like that. So for him to just come home, go downstairs, and then all of a sudden he's screaming and scrambling back up the stairs, I was like, what the heck is going on?
Because you just don't expect that. I mean, I'm constantly in my head and processing. Now I'm trying to transition, which is always very difficult for me. And shaking, I hate driving, so I'm shaking off the driving. So I got a million things going on. Tanya's cooking something amazing, I'm sure. So I'm smelling that. I'm getting hungry, and part those beads, and there is this floating hog's head.
So that to me was like, okay, thank God it wasn't just me. Like, I'm definitely not hallucinating.
Welcome, Chassie.
Hi, Chassie. So that was like my first sort of crash course in, believe what you're seeing, trust your experiences, because somebody else saw it too. You really did see that. So
Bruce, when this guy Bruce, the repairman, although in the book, and we're still not outing him, it was many, many years ago.
Right.
But we call him Repairman. We call him Repairman Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know if we know his last name. But we call him Repairman Jack. So anyway, there was a little bit of a slip there. But anyway, Repairman Jack, I felt like he left the house with things he didn't want to tell us.
Yeah, because it was so quick. It was so like, he had been so anxious to work with me. He had been he talked me into it because I was sort of, and then he was like, no, really, you do? Because I didn't believe him that I had the skills, really. When he convinced me that I did, then I was very anxious to work with him. But, and then all of a sudden it was like he couldn't get out of there quick enough and never returned my calls after that.
Right. And just as a little bit of a teaser, I'm just going to tell you, he was not the first person that came to that house that went away holding secrets that they wouldn't share with us. So, So that's a little bit of a teaser. I think this is a good place to just take a quick breather. We've and now it ratchets up. Now we're going to get deep into oppression. The only thing we were missing in this house is one What's the fourth one? Possession.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
we were possessed in a weird sort of way. But I think it was that very edge of oppression where you're not acting like yourself. So we just want to share a 30-second commercial with you. Just stay with us. I'm working on my Allen Ginsberg beard, which is going to get colored either this weekend or next week for a photo shoot. So I'm going to look much different probably next Thursday when I see you. But Tanya has designed a special beard oil. I'm wearing it right now. Lemon, citrus, and some bitters and orange bitters, I think. And it's quite nice. And it's for our good friends at Three Beards. It's their signature now, labeled Three Beards. So quick commercial. Just watch this. I think it's very funny. If you know Craig and the gang, you're going to love it. So here we go. So there you go. We love that. Oh, it comes back so fast.
We're like, whoops.
There you go. Oops. There you go.
Our
papers were a little out of order. So let's really we're gonna get into really where it really started to ratchet up. So all 5 of the people in the house, yeah, Lori says she loves it. Isn't it fun? And those guys are fun. They love it. They get a little bit of the proceeds. You make a little money through Outer Realms Bathworks. And all the beards be looking good. So if you have a man with a beard in your life, or you're a man with a beard and you have a life, order some of this oil from. How do they order it?
Go to the Etsy shop, Outer Realms Bathworks.
Nice.
Or you can go to outerrealmsbathworks.com.
So now that that's over, the business stuff, let's get back into this.
Mm-hmm.
All 5 of us by this time, and this is a couple months, several months now, plus the pressure of the business. Things weren't going with the business. We were spending a lot more money. Anybody who's ever had a business, clients don't come as quick as you anticipated or as often as you could. You have to do that. We had a lot of problems with the space. We had a terrible summer where we had to rent these big space heaters and put these big hoses out the window. So we're wearing down, and none of the 5 of us are sleeping well.
Right.
So it's about 5 months into this experience, and we're all suffering in our own ways. We're all getting irritable. Jolie's 4, and she's just out of sorts all the time because she's not sleeping. Jeremy's, in a brand new school. He's 12 years old. All the pressures that come with being that age, and we're all worn down. From this time, this is where it goes from infestation to oppression. It starts to show up with how we behave.
Right. So we should mention, well, you just talked about all of it, didn't you?
Well, a little bit, but that you have to be really conscious of what you bring to the situation. So we've learned that when we do an intake, when we take on a new case, when people are having problems, we ask, have you started a new business? Are you having financial problems? Are there people who are not getting along? Do you have people staying with you that normally wouldn't be staying with you? So there's a new energy in the house. Have you bought antiques? We're learning all this stuff based on our own experience. I mean, this house was a major field experience for us. Major on the job training. So we just wanted to mention that. And then the mood changes. This is where it gets Amityville Horror, because there was no red stuff dripping from the walls. Right. We did have a huge manifestation of bugs. Like that huge nest by the tree. You're talking thousands of bugs on the curtains and all, but it was a mundane explanation. It was not supernatural.
It was a mundane, but there were
weird.
There were a lot of mundane things going wrong with the house as well. I mean, so
right.
The water heater had exploded. We forgot to mention, I think, that's why the basement flooded. It wasn't even from the rain. It was because hadn't the water heater exploded? Wasn't it that?
I don't remember, because I don't want to give away the story. But on our big poltergeist, everybody get the hell out of the house night. Mm-hmm. The cap came off the water heater again.
I was pretty sure. So we weren't, obviously back then, we didn't take notes like we do now. So
No,
a
we were
lot
just
of
trying to
this is-
survive.
This is all from memory, so please forgive us because
Yeah.
it was a long time ago.
It's
and
been
we
17 years.
We have talked about this a lot. So verbally, we have all the notes. Obviously, we lived it, and it was frightening. So it's very clear
It was
in our
just
mind.
the cap that
Yeah.
the cap that came off. So there was something about that house. Okay, clean all the furnaces. Whoa, that's really great. But don't put in a new filter.
Right.
Install a brand new water heater, but don't install the pressure cap correctly. So it was those kinds of things that probably whatever dark entities, and we don't know, we didn't have the skills to communicate. And the people who could help us, what they were seeing was so horrific and
They
unsettling
wouldn't even
that
tell
they wouldn't
us.
share it with us,
Right.
which I disagree with. I disagree with.
Absolutely. I've
on-
never agreed with
On
that.
some of the TV shows, they present really difficult information for television, and that's wrong too. There are right ways and wrong ways, but as mitigators, forget investigators, as
Right.
people who are trying to mediate between the living and the dead, the human and the non-human, especially with dark entities, if there's something going on, we have this responsibility to tell, and we also have to use our words and use our diplomacy and our bedside manner, for lack of a better word. So we're trying to puzzle it out, and now these mood changes are happening. One afternoon, my business partner and I have a disagreement. Now, you have disagreements with your business partners, and we were teaching acting, and I had just gotten back from Chicago, and I was exposed to theater troupes and teachers and Buddhist monks who were doing Japanese Buto, which is this amazing post-World War II atomic bomb expression of pain and misery. And so I came back all hepped up. So we weren't seeing eye to eye anyway, but over this little thing, and we get so angry. We're standing in the kitchen and we get as far away instinctively from each other so nobody comes to harm with this big kitchen table in between us. And while we're fighting and yelling and screaming at each other, I'm going, this isn't right. This isn't right that we're doing this. It's way out of proportion with the difference of opinion, a minor disagreement, change of opinion, disagreement. And he finally leaves the room just so that we don't attack each other. He stomps up to his bedroom, and I hear glass breaking for over a minute. He goes into his bedroom, and he's breaking all this glass. Not like him. Crazy. We were a couple of hothead Italians. We were not as old and tired as we are now. We were still filled with a lot of vim and vinegar. But this was weird. Sometimes we fought like brothers, but not to the point of violence. So we had this weird instinct that we were being acted upon.
Yeah. And so you and I weren't doing much better as far as how we were getting along. We really weren't. Between all of it, the not sleeping, the problems, the kids were having, the calls in the morning, so all of it, and we were really just getting on each other's nerves, not getting along at all, both being pretty irritable.
So now, this is 17 years ago, so we're still 5 years out from our first real paranormal encounter where we start to take all of this in a very educational, analytical way.
Well, I wouldn't say our first real paranormal encounter. This was all real enough, but
that triggered us to really
Right.
cross that barrier into going, they're watching us. I think that this was part of that whole truck full of stuff, certainly, because we had experienced things in Brick and all. You're absolutely right, but we still weren't actively engaging. We weren't being proactive. We weren't trying
Right.
to understand. We were
Right.
just trying to survive. So in the midst of all of this, Tanya goes out. Now, there are times where we're not speaking. We're in a place, and if you're married, sometimes you go through these small patches where no matter what you say to each other, it's taken wrong. You're just anticipating and spoiling for a fight at any moment. So you go out.
Went to a baby shower.
Yeah, a baby shower. And I look on her nightstand, and what's there? Her engagement ring, her wedding band, and her 5-year diamond anniversary band. Because of everything that was going on, I'm tired, I'm agitated, I'm not thinking straight. So I'm thinking she left me a not so subtle message about how she's feeling about our marriage and our future. So I go, okay, good. The Scorpio rises in this Sicilian American from New Jersey.
Scorpio.
So there is this, and all the more so then, there is this solid wooden beam that runs around that has these cool metal poles that kind of separate what is my office from our bed, although there's no kind of real barrier there or anything. Also, my advice, if you never have, don't ever put your office in your bedroom. Worst thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a mistake. And you got a computer in there with all that, electromagnetic energy and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I take the 3 rings and I put them in the back. I've given them almost all the way to students and to fellow actors, members of my theater company and all. Hi, Joanne. Joanne was on Three Beards last night. Thank you for joining us over here. So I take the 3 rings. And, you turn around a porcelain theater mask. It's got a hole where you can hang it, and then it's hollow inside. And I take the 3 rings and I drop it down. And it's probably 6-7 inches deep. Well, 5-6 inches. 5-6 inches deep. And I hear the rings go, and I put them on a nail. Now, it's a 10-penny nail. It's sticking out from the wall probably this much. And it's on a real steep angle because I don't want these masks to fall and shatter. We have enough problems. So I hang the rings in the mask and I go out of my way. I go do something else. So
I come home. All I had really done was put some lotion on my hands and forgot to put my rings on because I was in a rush to get to the baby shower. So I had just really innocently forgotten them. And the whole time I was at the baby shower, I was worried because I was like, oh my gosh, where did I put them? Did I leave them on the dresser? Where did I leave them? And I was really worried that I may have lost them. So I couldn't wait to get home. First thing I do, of course, is ask Joey, have you seen my rings? And he's like, no.
No, right. So Scorpio is in full force. Sicilian Scorpio is in full force. I'm banging away on my computer, doing my best to ignore her. And she starts pressing me. Well, where are the rings? And you must know where they are. And not that I made a habit of taking your rings. So we're getting drawn into this. We're getting drawn into this thing. We're yelling. So I'm standing at the foot of the bed. She's standing by her dresser. And above my head and about a foot ahead is the mask. As we're fighting, the mask lifts off of the nail, begins to fall to the floor, and as it does, the rings come out of the back, and all 3 of them land on the bed.
So, yeah, and for them to do that, they're flying backwards. The mask is flying forward.
Right.
I don't know a lot about physics, but I just don't know to this day how that could have happened. The mask did not just fall off the nail.
Right, and I can see it so clearly. I mean, you have the mask lift off the 10-penny nail, start to drop, and then those rings come out of that hole in the back and land on the bed. Obviously, we're flabbergasted. And we saw the whole thing sort of in slow motion.
Like 3 in a row. It was like they're just, you know what I mean? Just spread out on it. Was crazy.
So the kids are having their thing. Why would they lie? They were not pulled into this kind of world with us at all. Our sons are very, very resistant about this world. And even Joe, even though she's a talented psychic medium, she kind of stays hands off because she sees this stuff and sees pretty horrific stuff. Right. So now we're getting, looking back on it now, we're getting data from a lot of different quarters, which is very, very important. We have Repairman Jack, we have us, we have the kids. Now it starts to happen to our roommate.
Right.
And we're not there.
No. So we were away. I think
we just went to spend the weekend at my parents to get out of the house.
He had come home from a wedding. He's home alone. He goes in the bathroom and he gets locked in to the bathroom. Nobody else is there, but it won't open from the inside. He can hear his cat outside the door getting increasingly more agitated. And 20 minutes later, the cat settles down and then the door just opens.
Yeah. So no lock on that door. Never had a problem with like the wood swelling up and the door being hard to handle or anything. So it's not like it was a humid day and the wood had, but why would it all of a sudden release? And why is the cat absolutely going nuts? Now, in a couple of weeks, we're going to share, well, in a month when you come back, March 17th, it's going to be a couple days before we present in Southwest Pennsylvania at a conference, which is cool. We still haven't gotten out very much to do this kind of stuff. We're doing an investigation at a farm the night before. We've been invited in to help, not to mitigate anything, but there's something going on and the people want to know. We feel like that's legitimate for us. That's within our mission statement. But anyway, we're going to talk about cases from Southwest Pennsylvania. And there was this case in a Victorian house. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it does involve cats. And 2 of the 4 cats died. Mm-hmm. So this can be very serious with pets. So obviously there's these entities, and we still to this day don't know what these entities were, because no one ever saw an entity per se, other than the hog head thing.
We don't know,
right? Well, I mean, any of us who could talk about it,
right? Well, Jolie saw the black mass,
right?
But I don't know that would necessarily qualify. Right. So
and
the hog head obviously was an entity, but yeah, aside from that.
So the oppression is getting to the point where our family is kind of starting to fall apart. Our relationship with our business partner is extremely, extremely strained.
Pretty jangled by that point. So we contact at that point our spiritual mentors, which were Joey's aunt and uncle, who were just wonderful mentors to us, taught us a lot, taught us about meditation, taught us just so many different things.
If you saw the episode with CL and Michael about haunted objects, we told the story of the Egyptian tarot cards that showed up after a decade on the back porch of our friend's bookstore. And she had connected us. That was our Aunt Annette. So it's our Aunt Annette, it's our uncle. They had all kinds of healing modalities between them. They had traveled all over the world. They had been to sacred sites.
Yeah.
So we called them.
They come to the house and
we sit there at the table and we lay it all out over several hours. Now we've done it in less than 50 minutes now, but we're trying to process. We haven't, poured through it, turned it into a book that's now an outline for a presentation. We've done a bunch of times. So it takes, according to my notes here, it takes several hours. And they're not saying much at all. They're just listening, which is okay. But then they get in their car and they go home. They don't say, well, here's what we think is going on. And this is, I think Antoinette walked the house, but I'm not even sure.
She did.
Yeah. And so she calls me. Now, this is the only woman in the world who ever makes my dad back off from anything. She's a very powerful Sicilian woman, physically, emotionally, spiritually, just an amazing woman. We miss her every day. And she calls me and she says, look, and she never had any kids of her own. So her nieces and nephews, especially me and a couple of others, like we're her kids. She goes, look, here's what I think. It's not just your house that's haunted. It's the whole neighborhood. And you got to get out of there. Do whatever you want. Take a financial loss. We'll lend you the money. Break the lease and get out of there. Joey, promise me you're going to do that. And that's it. And she hangs up the phone. We have a business. We have a 4-year-old. We have a 12-year-old that we just were in a sort of transient situation. Now they're in another weird situation. We have a commitment with our business partner, and we still have a couple months on the lease.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's about a week later, and when the final straw, 3 a.m. again, we're sleeping and we hear this noise, like a noise we have never heard, and it was crazy. And all of a sudden there's just hot water flooding the basement everywhere. The hot water heater went again. And we just couldn't take anymore. There was, and I think there were a lot, Joey said it took us a few hours to kind of go over everything with his aunt and uncle. when it was happening, there were a lot of smaller things. There
Oh,
were
I'm
so
sure.
many things
Good
going
point.
on. Those things have been lost over the years because they didn't stick out in our mind, obviously, as
Mhm.
much as a lot of this bigger stuff. But it was a daily thing. Every single day there was something going on.
Yeah, and that's what makes for an infestation
Right.
and into oppression.
But it was thing
is the
after thing,
consistently
thing
right.
after thing, and a lot of it wasn't even paranormal. I just remember constantly calling the landlord, this has now happened, this we need,
And
blah,
she's
blah, blah.
trying to
And
sell.
she
She's
felt
trying to
really
sell,
bad.
but she's trying to sell the place,
Mhm.
and deal after deal is falling through.
Well, she started trying to sell the place. She didn't want to sell the place. Initially, it was a home she had grown up in. It was her parents' house.
That's
and
right.
That's why she had
redid the whole
remodeled
thing.
it. She just wanted to keep it and rent it out. But because it was becoming such a financial drain on her, it was such a headache because almost every month we were calling her with different issues. Some of them were minor, but it was thing after thing after thing. So
And I'll tell you what, I'm not sure why we left it out, but there was another aspect to this that's not in the book. And I don't know, maybe we've even matured over the last couple of years we must have had a reason. Right. Okay, Angelina,
yeah.
this is perfect. Remodeling really does stir up activity, and that's absolutely right. Next door to us, they
Mhm.
were doing a major
renovation.
Mhm. Well, it wasn't a renovation, actually. It was an addition.
Well,
So they were digging up
trying to do.
their backyard to put an addition. I think they had a baby on the way,
Yes.
and then the baby's born. They hit water. They had half of the tree roots. They had half of the framing that was finally up collapse after a storm. It was thing after thing after thing. So when my aunt said, our aunt really
Mhm.
said, it's the whole neighborhood, that made sense, and it certainly makes sense now. I'm going to show my ignorance here because that's how I roll. It's important. I was just reading something that the bravest thing you can say is I don't know. So CL says, were you on the north side? I don't know what that means, so I don't know how to answer the question. But if you let us know, we'll answer the question for you. So so the neighbors were just flabbergasted. They were, I don't know if they were fighting, but they had mentioned they were having serious money problems. They didn't have enough money, all these setbacks. Now they got a big hole in the back of their house. So what do? I mean, they got all this plastic, the baby's there. Baby is now bunking either with mom or dad or their daughter, who was a couple years older.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Angelina says, the whole neighborhood and the land area itself, which is, and if we knew then what we know now, I would have done that research. I would have pulled that thread when my aunt told me that. The internet wasn't quite what it was. We were running the business and all that. So 3 a.m. it was, almost on the nose, when this water valve busts off.
Right. I was going to say, if we knew then what we know now, when I had that gut-wrenching feeling to drive away in the first place, we would have
I think that would have been a hard sell. Because then we were on time pressure. We were looking for a very specific thing. We might have tried to, interesting. Didn't know that.
No, we did not know that.
I will tell you this. In the time that we have spent here, Cortland is active. Mm-hmm. We investigated an unsolved murder in Niles. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on there. I mean, it is the Mid-Ohio Valley. Mm-hmm. This whole Mid-Ohio Valley, Southwest Pennsylvania, Northwestern West Virginia, the eastern part of Ohio. I mean, our house is, Michael has been here. It's very, I mean, what happens there? It becomes very, very interesting.
I would love to hear those stories sometimes. Yeah, we'll have to hear those.
Yeah, we have you coming on to talking fact and fiction of witches, but maybe sometime, I mean, while we're here.
Yeah.
We're only half an hour away from Youngstown. We would love to hear some of those stories because an area haunting is something that we haven't covered. Like, Mid-Ohio Valley, the Quartz Ridges in Kentucky, talking about those different kinds, where the two rivers meet in West Virginia, but not a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. like that. So
Mhm.
that would be very interesting. So that's it. We've had it. And this is where, the anger thing, the darkness, the moodiness was very Amityville. This next thing is very Poltergeist, where that's it. We're out. We are out. We are out. So we arranged for Tanya and the kids to stay with my parents until we could get new living arrangements. My business partner started to stay at other people's houses. He wasn't there. And I remember every night going to bed. Again, we couldn't use the basement. It was ruined. So I was on a fold-out couch in the living room by myself with a stack of books every night after work to try to get to sleep. The landlord, who was embarrassed by the landlord didn't know about any of the paranormal stuff.
No,
She only knew about the failing water heater, the missing. No.
It was so, I don't even, well, our current landlords, we don't really talk to them much about the activity. We've kind of sort of in jest mentioned a little bit,
Yeah.
but no, we didn't want to sound,
No.
crazy.
So,
we didn't
right.
mention it
So,
to her.
She did have a prospective buyer for the property. She was pretty confident it was going to go through. So she let us out of the lease a month early with no penalty. Our housemate found a place maybe a week after that. So he left about 3 weeks earlier. So about 2 years after we moved out, we go to visit Uncle Robert and Antoinette down in Tennessee. Well, we go to visit Uncle Robert.
Yeah.
Because Antoinette, as we had explained when we did the haunted objects, got her dream house in Tennessee, got away from everything that wasn't great in their life. They had just started their wellness practice, and she was painting a room in the house, sat down before taking a bath to rest, had a massive brain incident and died sitting there. So we went to see Uncle Robert. And we finished our dinner one night, and the kids went off to play in another part of the room. And I said, look, Uncle Robert, tell me what you guys saw, what you intuited, what you knew about that house and that neighborhood. And I'm sitting at one end of the table. He's sitting at the other end of the table, kind of pauses, puts down his napkin, sits back in his chair, pauses for a second, leans forward and says, your aunt didn't want to tell you what she saw. Not when you were living there, not after you left. You'll have to trust me. It's still best that you don't know. So this is maybe 3 years before and then losing my aunt was so emotionally painful for him. The only thing that he could do was rebuild his life with another family, with another set of people. And so we lost contact with him. He just didn't contact anybody anymore. And maybe if we had put out the books and we were trained and we were doing what we were doing, maybe he would have told us, because we've seen plenty on our own now. But who knows? So that we will never know about that. So
Yeah, we could. Well, it would be interesting. I never had this thought before, just now. If we went to Tenton Falls and just drove down that street.
I wouldn't even know how to find it. I'm sure I could find some old tax record. Oh, don't tell people where the house is. Now they have it up, but you won't know what house it is. And probably if you're real sensitive and all that, maybe don't go there. Angelina, if you have any sense of what was going on there. Oh, Jessica asked if you could remote view it.
You know what? I could just pull in a little picture. You're good point, Jessica. We don't have to go there. Yeah, I remote view people's homes all the time. I have pictures.
Let me ask you a question, though. Can you remote view back in time?
Yes, you can, because you're not. I mean, time is just a construct that you're not bound by when.
Yeah.
You can send your
because who knows what's
consciousness
happening
anywhere.
there 17 years later? You know what I mean? Who even knows if the house is still there, or if it's undergone even more,
I'm doing that.
or has been changed the foot. Well. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Tanya's going to give that a try. So we'll give you an update at some time about that. So you're getting, you can definitely do it and all that kind of stuff. So this is why we say, just as a way of wrap up, if you genuinely have experienced this stuff, you don't brag about it. You don't, you don't want to encounter it ever again. So the verdict is in here. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what she sees.
Yeah.
You must update, astral project back. Yes, for sure. The audience has spoken. So that will be really interesting. I mean, I'll sit there or lay there with you, and I still remember the house clearly enough that I'll at least energetically go back in time. I was told by someone we really respect the other night that my abilities are, I just don't, but I don't. So I don't know. So Angelina says, I get a lot of confusion in that land area where you lived. Energy is scattered. Yeah.
That could make sense. How funny would it be? I just had this thought too. So I either astral project or remote view. Either way, I'm sending my consciousness back in time to when we're in the house. And at least some of the activity that we're experiencing, perhaps the person coming through the beaded curtain is me.
And making 3 a.m. phone calls?
I don't know.
You know,
about
it was
the phone
another
calls.
thing, and maybe we just missed it in the notes, but how about the night that the locked open caboodle makeup kit slammed shut?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. There
Yeah.
were hundreds of little things like that, you know, I'm sure we just, you know, kind of forgotten over the time because they were little, but all combined, added up day after day. It was a lot. We were just dealing with it constantly.
Oh, there you go. So Angelina says, get a lot of images. I can see why your aunt did not tell you what specifically she saw. It's like a lot of nightmare type images. Yeah, we hadn't looked at the history of the house. We just didn't know. And I think that's why this experience is very valuable, because we present and talk about it different. Yeah. I was going to say to Angelina, right? Lori says, are you afraid it will bring it back to where you are now? There are ways to ward and look in without having things come. But I think, Angelina, you know, do all the good stuff tonight, especially for you. You're still recovering from your cancer journey. You know, ward, sage. We should probably do that tonight too. Before we go to bed, burn some good incense and all of that kind of stuff. Have our stones and crystals nearby. So someone earlier said hello from Australia, and look at this, from Central Scotland.
Oh, hello.
Hello, McCarthy.
Hello, Melissa.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely cleanse yourself tonight. CL says use some Flint, right? As long as they don't see you too. That's the weird thing, right, Lori? That's Ingo Swan.
Yes, Ingo Swan.
Remote viewing the moon. They shouldn't see you. So this is going to take some thought. It's going to take some prep.
Yes.
I will definitely take the journey with you.
Maybe I should get some Flint. I don't have Flint. CL, if you could message me, where's the best place around here, or should I just get it online, or like hook me up? Please?
Yeah. So, you know, that's how all this started. We just don't think in those terms because we're not like investigating, like drill down, answers. And we're mostly trying to help other people. And it was the past, but that's how we wound up doing the hypnotic regression for our experience in 2009. Because a radio host said, do you ever get regressed to find out what happened in those 2 hours and 15 minutes? That opened up a whole world there. So yeah, so definitely Lori needs some Flint. CL's gonna let you know. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you. This was it wasn't fun, but it's always fun being with you guys. So talking about this stuff isn't necessarily fun, but we always enjoy having you guys along.
And Angelina remote viewing along the line, and I'm sorry you saw some ugly things. Yeah, there was yes, it goes back all the way. It's Central Jersey, Tin Falls. It goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War. You have all kinds of land disputes. You have all kinds of things going on, and something really was so I just want to share with you guys, because Tanya isn't going to be with next week. I'm going to be talking about the 3 classics that I used to write Three Gothic Doctors: the stage play, the stage musical, the novel, and then the LA production, the expanded production. That's probably not going to happen now until 2023 because COVID is still really messing up the theater industry, especially in California. A lot of theaters have shut down, and they're trying to reimagine how they're going to do things. But it's not about the book. I'm going to talk about Frankenstein, Island of Dr. Moreau, and Jekyll and Hyde, and what those authors, what was going on with them and their philosophies and their experiences that led them to write those books, and what it tells us about the 21st century, what's going on. So I'm going to be talking about the eugenics movement. I think you're going to find a lot of very surprising things. Who is involved in the United States in the eugenics movement, at what time, and for how long. I'm actually giving this presentation for the University of Georgia's Lifelong Learning Center on Monday. So I'm kind of piloting on them, and it'll be real polished and ready to go Thursday for you guys. Then the week after that, it's going to be George Uhas, who had an internet problem up on the mountain in Western North Carolina. He's going to come to talk about his book, Imagine That, his travels to 125 countries, his experiences that led him to believe that imagination is the most important tool that we have. Then on March 10th, we're going to have Craig Ansel from Three Beards Podcast, who's also one of our RTC, also one of our contributors, and new RTC member Chad Pitts. And we're going to be talking about angels and demons, and can they and how do they influence humanity? And I know many of you in the chat room here with us tonight are going to have lots to say about this subject. Really looking forward to it. And then March 17th, Tanya will be back, and we're going to talk about this Victorian multi-level hauntings, multi-generational family, multi-generational hauntings, haunted objects, craziness. So that'll be a great show, warming up for our March 19th. And then the 24th, two more contributors coming on, Michael and CL. CL, I guess we just made you an unofficial contributor. We're going to come and have a conversation about witches in the movies, TV, and what real life is. CL has this great term, aesthetic witches.
Mm-hmm.
Which I love. You know, what's the deal? So Angelita says, angels and demons, nice discussion for that one. Yeah, Michael says, we'll miss not seeing you for a bit, Miss Tanya, but you have a lot going on. Maybe have some big announcements.
Yeah.
Your future's a little in flux right now, and that happens sometimes. So, okay. Yeah, and then April is full. Reverend Carter's coming back to talk about extraterrestrials in the Bible. That was a super, and I'm going to do a political episode, a really interesting book called The Trial of George W. Bush. What if the International Criminal Court put George W. Bush on trial for war crimes for the Iraq War? As we're sitting here on the verge of maybe Russia invading Ukraine, you know, what do presidents do? And when lives are lost, are they responsible? And where are the parameters? So we got some very interesting stuff coming up. So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. It was so great to have this time with you.
I will see you next week on Into the Outer Realms, where
the paranormal and the supernatural are just the normal
and the natural. Take care, everybody.